2010. We're actually down a little from the year before. We responded a little over 71,000 calls for service countywide. Our investigation units caseload actually increased to just around 600, and they're the unit that handles the majority of our serious investigations, felony investigations throughout the year. And a lot of the other calls are handled by the uniform division on the road. The sex offender registration, as most of you probably know, continues to climb. We were at 501 for Warren County at the end of the year. We're now close to 550, and that's, as you know, probably in either one of the Warren or Butler County, or any county for that matter, it continues to climb in numbers. And most of you know that if you wanted to find out who they are, you can get on our website and actually look at each and every one of them, find out where they live, sign up for alerts. If anybody moves within 1,000 feet of your residence, you can do all those kind of things through our website. We issued 1,366 carrying concealed weapon permits in 2010. We're just under 7,500 that we've issued since that law was enacted in 2004. The last couple of years, those numbers have actually increased pretty significantly in the years before. To give you kind of an idea, I think I mentioned last year, the makeup of the bulk of the criminal activity in our county tends to be property crimes, burglaries, break-ins, thefts out of vehicles. Those seem to happen in bunches. They're very challenging type of crime for us to investigate and handle. But they get solved that way as well. And throughout the year, we made quite a number of different arrests, and we may solve 4 or 5 or 6 or 8, or even in one case I'll talk about in a while, 11 burglaries that are done by various people. And recently in the news this year, there were two women that were arrested for breaking into houses that encompass both Butler and Warren County as well. So those types of things happen on a regular basis. We arrested a couple individuals for counterfeiting in the southern part of Warren County earlier in last year. They were simply using a computer and a printer, and we're actually able to pass off some of these dollars. I don't quite understand that, but it worked for a little while before we caught up with them. We had 5 bank robberies in 2010 in Warren County. All of those led to arrest, all different individuals. 4 of those were in Deerfield Township, which is the most populated area of our county, and then 1 in Waynesville that we assisted in. We arrested a couple of people earlier in the year, and I apologize, typically we do this with Monroe Police Department. I don't know for sure the particulars, but we arrested a couple other individuals late last year for selling thousands of dollars worth of stolen property here at the flea market, and that's one of those challenges we have on a regular basis also. We arrested 5 individuals in Deerfield Township. They had a huge several $1,000 check writing scheme that was going on for a while before we caught up with them, and they're currently in jail waiting charges. Our foreclosures, obviously the economy is still in the news often, and our foreclosures actually in 2009 and 2010 were about the same, a little over 1,500 for Warren County, 1,540, and at the end of 2010 it was only 1,520. I say only, not because that's not enough, but during the late fall, a lot of the banks were canceling some of the foreclosures, so it actually slowed things down because we were originally on pace to go over that 1,549 from the year before. So, if you remember last year, I talked to you about a couple additional canine units that we added as a result of some drug forfeiture money. We have 3 canine units that are working, and they worked the entire year 2010. They were actually called out just about 330 times between the 3 of them for various searches of houses, sniffs of cars, seized a number of different types of drugs, illicit drugs. They were asked to do 38 tracks of individuals. 20 of those led to arrest. They were successful in finding these bad guys, 2 of which were in 2 different burglary cases. They were also responsible for recovering a little over $400,000 from drug dealers that we can put back into our drug investigation efforts. I'm not sure if the Drug Task Force, Warren County Drug Task Force, should they come here much to kind of give you a recap at all? In 2010, they made 174 arrests throughout the year. They're largely responsible for those mid to upper level drug traffickers. They took about $2.8 million worth of drugs off the streets, marijuana, cocaine, that sort of thing. Meth's not quite what it used to be. Heroin has become an increasingly significant problem for us in this area. Prescription drugs still seems to be out there the largest problem we fight. I also mentioned last year we talked about the court security division of our agency that takes care of the courts in our complex, but they also take care of moving all the inmates throughout our county. We've been renting bed space in Butler County Jail for a little over 3 years now. And in fact, we've been spending about $1.2 million each of those years to Butler County for just that bed space. We've been in the process of the jail renovation, adding second bunks. That's 3/4 of the way completed now. The state has approved that. And to give you an idea of what that's done to Warren County tax dollars, we were spending about $100,000 a year for that bed space. In January, we only spent $50,000. February, we spent $22,000, and in March, it was just a little under $30,000 because we are actually double bunking in several of these units now. The last part will be completed at the end of May. That is proposed to save us about $150,000 over the next 12 months. Now, that's kind of hurts the Butler County Sheriff's Office because of that. I don't know what else to say, but it's a wise move, and they've been very gracious to help us through some pretty difficult times. So the last couple things I just want to mention is we've been pretty active over the last 3 years attending our township meetings, sharing information on a monthly basis on what goes on in the county. The other thing we did last year is we joined, and I think the Butler County Sheriff's Office did the same, was joined the Secure Communities Initiative, and it's kind of a fancy term to say that the FBI fingerprint database has now joined forces with Homeland Security and ICE, and now when we bring somebody into our jail that is suspected to be illegal, it's all automated. Once you fingerprint it, it checks those databases simultaneously, and then ICE actually responds to us as opposed to us trying to make calls and get somebody there to determine their status. So that's all done automatically. And we attend on a regular basis the Homeland Security Joint Terrorism Task Force meetings so that we can share those types of threats to all of our Warren County law enforcement agencies. And then the last thing I want to mention is, anybody heard or read much about the license plate readers that are now at various cruisers and fixed spots throughout Warren, Butler, and Hamilton County? And we had there was Channel 9, I believe, did a little bit of a spot on it here a couple months ago, nice coverage. Several of the cruisers in Warren County have them. But basically all there are is cameras, if you don't know, that sit on the cruisers or in fixed locations, and they're constantly taking pictures of license plates and cars. About 3,200 a minute, up to 3,200 of these a minute, and they're scanned into a database. And when this story aired, there was a little over 11.5 million plates in this database. And I mentioned earlier, talking about a burglary suspect, we had been getting hit pretty hard in the south or southern part of our county. We fed this suspect information to this database that basically gave us a pin map of the locations where this car picture was taken. We went to those locations, and there were pawn shops, and we found property at these pawn shops that belonged to our burglary victims. And we were able to wrap up a pretty big case. They arrested this guy out of Indiana. So it's a searchable database. It's not to be used for checking for speeding violations and things like that. But the other thing it does do is if you're scanning plates in the parking lot or as you pass, it automatically runs them through the leads database and will send an alert to the deputy or officer if it's entered as a stolen plate or if there's a warrant on the registered owner of that vehicle. So it's pretty high-tech stuff, pretty scary. That Uncle Sam looking over you, or what you want to call it. But used correctly, it's a pretty good resource. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.